I want to tell you about a prison that shaped Rapture's war. Sofia Lamb's Persephone facility stood not as a refuge but a forge. She weaponized trauma, the screams, children's voices reforged into soldiers. How does a city built on freedom justify its monsters? Persephone's towers loom like cathedral spires, each echo a mind broken, each shadow a tool honed. This is the story of how Rapture devoured its own soul. In 1946, Andrew Ryan carved a covenant beneath the waves, a city where God's law and king's chains could drown. His creedmen as God, reason as scripture birthed Rapture's spires, each a monument to unfettered will, but ambition breeds shadows. Sofia Lamb, her voice a scalpel, carved another truth into those walls. Persephone's halls, cloaked in false mercy, became a forge where pain was alloyed into power. Children's minds, shattered by hunger or isolation, were reforged as weapon-silent, obedient, lethal, their screams. Not cries for help, but the hiss of steam escaping a boiler on the brink. Ryan's utopia had a twin, a lab where freedom dissolved into control. The depths did not merely swallow Rapture, they turned its soul into a siege engine. What does a city built on pride sound like when it screams? Sofia Lamb arrived in Rapture as a renowned psychiatrist. Ryan tasked her with measuring the city's mental resilience. He did not ask her to build a cult. She did not seek to heal minds, but to fracture them. Persephone's halls echoed with the promise of salvation while its cells bred obedience through starvation, sleep deprivation, and electroshock. The screams, a symphony of reconditioning. Subjects were stripped of self, rewired to crave collective purpose. A weapon against objectivism, a counterpunch to Ryan's individual as God. Ryan hired her to diagnose weakness. She diagnosed the system. Her patients emerged not as citizens, but as Rapture family disciples wired to venerate her as mother, to see her as the antidote to Ryan's loneliness. Collectivism not as ideal but as contagion. The deeper the trauma, the sharper the loyalty. The more broken the mind, the more malleable the weapon. Did Ryan know? Or did he, in his hubris, believe no ideology could infect his city? Persephone's reports were sealed, but its results walked. The Rapture family did not rally through sermons. They recruited through shattered psyches, through minds reforged to equate suffering with belonging. The screams from Persephone protests were the birth cries of an army. Not of flesh but of fractured wills, and when the family moved, it did not march. It shambled a tide of hollow-eyed acolytes, each a monument to Lamb's design. Rapture's final scream was not against the sea. It was the sound of a city being unmade, one mind at a time. The screams from Persephone's halls were not cries for freedom. They were the hum of a forger's flame minds bent, reshaped into instruments of terror. Sofia Lamb, architect of Rapture's final unraveling, spent years within those walls, a prisoner in her own design. Persephone, a fortress draped in the lie of rehabilitation, became her laboratory. Political dissidents vanished there. What emerged were hollow shells reprogrammed to obey, to kill, to forget. Did the city's planners hear the echoes, or did they mistake torment for progress, golden age, a word carved in bronze, while Lamb's knives carved into flesh and will? Her years in isolation birthed a grim epiphany. Trauma is malleable, pain a language, the prison's darkness became her canvas. Subjects writhed under light and shadow, sound and silence. Each breakdown curated, each surrender weaponized. Persephone's true purpose was not punishment, it was proof a prototype for Rapture's extinction. A utopia cannot coexist with its own executioner. Lamb's mind, fractured by the very system she sought to destroy, turned Persephone's walls into a crucible. What rose from those fires was not a savior, not yet. Only the blueprint for a new orderon where the city's final scream was not an accident, it was design. A symphony of shattered minds, each note leading to the unmaking, each soul a shiv hidden in the hymn. The collapse of Rapture in 1958 did not drown Persephone, it birthed it. As Atlas rebellion tore through the city's underbelly, Sofia Lamb watched her sanctuary become a pressure valve. The screams outside were raw, primal, but inside her facility, they were curated. The air reeked of antiseptic and blood, a sterile rot that clung to the walls. Children's laughter echoed down corridors, not the warm kind, but the hollow, rehearsed chirps of minds stripped of spontaneity. Eleanor's own voice, once a weapon of control, became the soundtrack to new horrors. When the splicers breached the lower levels, setting fire to the research labs, Lamb did not flee. She recalibrated. The prisoners, once symbols of political defiance, were now subjects. Their trauma, once a byproduct, became the catalyst. Cold steel tables hummed with static, each session a symphony of synapses being rewired. A girl named Lindsay Tan was not just brokench, was assembled into something else. The war's chaos was the crucible, and Persephone's chambers, filled with the stench of ozone and fear, became the forge. Lamb did not merely survive the civil war. She weaponized it. Every scream that escaped the facility was no longer a cry for help. It was a blueprint, a prototype. The Big Sisters, their lullabies now laced with venom, emerged not from madness but method. Elena, trapped in her mother's design, finally understood. The prison was never meant to hold her. It was meant to make her a weapon too. The pages burn, each line a scalpel, carving identities into hollow shells. Who profits when souls are stockpiled? Persephone's reports don't hide the truth, only the methods. Torture wasn't chaos. It was calculus. Words like reintegration masked the math of madness. How many became weapons before Elena? The screams, a symphony of compliance. You think you're seeing a prison. You're witnessing a foundry, minds forged, not broken. And every very goddamn page signs the death warrant of the self. The screams from Persephone weren't protests. They were the sound of Elena's mind being unmade. Sofia Lamb's rescue center stripped her of childhood, of identity, until her thoughts became a Hiveth first Big Sister prototype. Inside those walls, trauma wasn't healed, it was weaponized. Elena's reconditioning was a symphony of horror, memory rewritten, pain repurposed. A little girl became a soldier whose only language was violence. Her laughter, once pure, echoed as a splicer's battle cry. Persephone didn't break minds, it forged them into tools. When Rapture's civil war erupted, Sophia's creation was unleashed. The reconditioned flooded the streets. Twisted siblings, lovers, mothers, turned against flesh and blood. Their minds, shattered and rewired, carried whispers of Elena's voice. A child's lullaby became a trigger for murder. The city's fall wasn't written in fire, it was etched in the silence after each scream. Splicers fought not for ideals, but for survival against minds that had no concept of mercy. Persephone's graduates didn't bleed, they calculated. Elena's prototype taught them how. What remains of Rapture isn't ruins, it's a grave. Beneath the Atlantic, the dead aren't buried. They are submerged in the echoes of Sofia Lamb's experiment. A civilization drowned by the weight of its own broken children. The Big Sisters still walk that abyss. Their lanterns cut through the dark, and in their eyes, Elena's shadow lingers, a girl who never left, only changed. Persephone's legacy isn't a prison, it's a requiem. For every mind turned into a weapon, the ocean weeps. 315 words. The screams from Persephone weren't protests, they were the sound of minds shattered and rewired. Sofia Lamb's rescue center was no sanctuary, it was a forge. Walls still hum with the static of conditioning. The Big Sister program, her final masterpiece, injured collectivism, outlived her. Victims became sisters, bound by a single poisoned oath. No chains here. No locks, only the weight of rewritten loyalty. The prisoners never resisted. Why would they? Their pain was purpose. Their obedience was survival. Awe then at this rotting monument. The ideology lingers, sharp as a blade. Sisters still march in perfect line, even as the sea gnaws at their prison, even as the salt bleeds through the concrete. What is Persephone now? A graveyard? A tomb? No, it is a mirror. A testament to trauma weaponized, to minds bent into weapons without a single bullet. The ocean weeps, the walls whisper, and in the silence between the sisters stand unbroken, unblinking. Their loyalty is Lamb's final triumph, a prison that outlived its warden. A cult that outwalked its fire. Persephone decays, its inmates do not. The sea takes stone, it cannot take this. The prison's walls held more than prisoners, they held architects of ruin. Sofia Lamb, visionary of the rescue center, sculpted Persephone into a forge for shattered souls. Her methods, trauma as alloy, compliance as currency. She did not break minds, she remolded them. Elena, her refined the process. Where Lamb brute-forced obedience, Elena coaxed it with precision. She mapped neural pathways not to heal, but to hijack. Her notes whisper of voluntary subjects, voluntary in a language only the desperate speak. Atlas or Fontaine, the name shifted with each reconditioning. A test subject ascended to prototype, his body a canvas for Aliner's theories. When his resistance flared, they drowned it in deltas and theta until his scream became a trigger, a weapon. The lab's true legacy lies not in its reports, but in the echoes. The sisters Aliner birthed the hollow-eyed wraiths who patrol Rapture's ruins, their thoughts locked in loops of violence. Lamb's salvation outlived her fire. Aliner's equations outwalked her shadow. Atlas' voice, now a war cry, haunts every corner of the sea. What becomes of a prison when its inmates are no longer prisoners? Persephone's answer is a hymn to dread. The sea erodes stone. It cannot erase what was engineered to endure. The mind, once weaponized, does not decay. It only waits. The cognitive reconditioning reports are not records. They are scalpels. Each page cuts deeper into the myth of Persephone as a sanctuary. What Lamb built was no prison. It was a forge, trauma was the fuel, compliance the fire, and the Big Sisters perfect hollowed vessels, the screams you hear in these documents, not pleas, protocols. Subjects stripped of identity, reassembled as instruments of order. One report details a girl's fear of water transformed into a trigger for aggression. Another shows laughter rewired to signal obedience. The method was not force, it was erasure. Lamb did not break minds. She dissolved them, then rebuilt the shards into something unrecognizable. The Big Sisters did not need strength. Their power lay in psychological precision. A flicker of doubt, a whisper of guilt, these were the chains that bound their victims. The reports confirm it. Every sister was a living algorithm, calibrated to exploit the human need for belonging. Love, guilt, shame weaponized with clinical detachment. What remains in the relics is not horror, it is horror made efficient. Lamb's genius was not in cruelty. It was in the quiet certainty that minds could be molded like clay, and the world simply handed her the kiln. The sea still drowns Persephone. But the tide cannot drown what was designed to survive it. The relics whisper a truth. Some weapons do not fire bullets, they fire memories. And memories once programmed never fade. The screams from Persephone were not cries for freedom. They were the gasps of souls unmade and remade. Sofia Lamb's sanctuary did not heal minds, it forged them into instruments of obedience. Each shattered psyche was reforged under a doctrine. Asterisk, would you kindly asterisk as theology, compliance as salvation. Compliance as salvation enforcers, their wills dissolved into a collective purpose. Objectivism, collectivism, both ideologies demanded the same sacrifice, the self. Lamb's utopia was a mirror of Rapture's failures. She did not reject Ayn Rand's vision, she completed it. By erasing individuality, she proved that no system, no creed could survive without the human spirit to anchor it. The Big Sisters were not just enforcers. They were living parables of what happens when ideology becomes a religion. Their every gesture, every calculated kindness, was a performance to erase the line between choice and coercion. Persephone's legacy is not in its walls. It lingers in the question of what we become when we surrender our will to a cause. Aliner Lamb fought to preserve the self. Her mother sought to abolish it. Both women were consumed by their convictions. The difference is one left a warning. The other left a weapon. What does it cost to build a world without doubt? Persephone's ruins whisper the answer. Ideology unchallenged does not liberate, it excavates, it buries. The final irony, the prison that taught minds to obey could not control its own collapse. The sisters still march, but their purpose is forgotten. Only the memory of broken wills remains, and in that memory we are warned. The screams from Persephone were not cries for freedom. They were the whirring of gears, the forging of weapons. What did Sofia Lamb become after the reconditioning? A scientist. A martyr, a god. Her final words echo, asterisk, they didn't break us. We became something better, something necessary. Asterisk.